This is not just a war story. It's a story of sweat, mud, blood, and a mountain the U.S. Army had to climb again and again, 10 times, under monsoon rain, jungle fire, and an enemy that lived inside the earth. If you love true American war legends, hit subscribe, because this is the battle soldiers said felt like being fed into a meat grinder. It began with a hill, a nameless, wet, green mass of jungle in the A Shau Valley, the deadliest valley of the Vietnam War. To the soldiers of the U.S. 101st Airborne Division, it was simply Hill 937. To reporters, families, and eventually the world, it would earn a darker name, Hamburger Hill, because soldiers came down that mountain torn apart like ground meat. But before it became a symbol of Vietnam's brutality, it was just another point on a map. Another hill, another target in another operation. No one knew they were walking into one of the most brutal battles of the entire war. It began on May 10, 1969. At dawn, under monsoon clouds so thick they looked like bruises across the sky, American soldiers moved through the tree line toward the first slope of Hill 937. The jungle swallowed sound, birds silent, wind motionless, grass dripping with cold rain. But the stillness was a lie. Inside the mountain, carved deep into the mud and stone, the North Vietnamese Army, NVA, had built a fortress, bunkers, tunnels, hidden firing positions, machine gun nests camouflaged under leaves so perfectly they looked like nature itself. The moment the first American platoon stepped forward, the hillside erupted. Machine guns spat fire. RPGs arced down like burning comets. Snipers fired from trees. Tripwires snapped, unleashing hidden grenades. Claymores planted backwards blasted shrapnel outward. The soldiers hit the ground, shocked by the violence. They weren't climbing a hill. They were climbing into a trap. Still, they pushed forward. Hour after hour, soaked, crawling, bleeding. Every yard gained cost a life. The mud turned red under their boots. The jungle steamed with smoke. And the NVA didn't retreat. They didn't break. They simply disappeared into tunnels and reappeared above or beside the Americans, firing from angles no one could predict. By evening, the first assault failed. The hill was barely touched. Day 2 brought more rain. Helicopters struggled to fly through the thick clouds. Supplies were dropped by hand from hovering Hueys, many falling into enemy lines. After another failed climb, officers realized something horrifying. The NVA controlled the entire hill, from root to peak. They knew every inch. And they had the advantage. But the U.S. Army wasn't going to quit, not with the A Shau Valley at stake. Command ordered a second assault, then a third, then a fifth, then a seventh. Each time, the same nightmare repeated. Americans climbing through mud so deep it sucked boots off feet, dodging bullets cracking past their helmets, hearing the screams of wounded soldiers echo through the trees, watching medics crawl under fire to drag back the dying. By day 5, the monsoon hit full force. Water poured down the hill like a river. Rain blinded vision. Weapons jammed. Grenades slipped from wet hands. Radio signals fizzled into static. And still the NVA fought like ghosts, never fully seen, always deadly. One soldier later said, "You didn't fight men on Hamburger Hill, you fought the mountain itself." Day 6 Command decided to throw everything they had. Artillery shook the earth. Airlifts dropped napalm that rolled like orange fire across treetops. Gunships strafed the ridgeline with thousands of rounds. The entire mountain seemed to burn. But when the troops climbed, the NVA were waiting, untouched, hidden, alive. They fired into the smoke, into the rain, into bodies crawling upward. The Americans, exhausted and furious, charged again, screaming, slipping, firing their M16s until barrels glowed. Still the hill wouldn't fall. Day 8, the cost was becoming unbearable. Entire platoons were gone. Some officers questioned the mission privately, but publicly, the order remained. Take the hill. The next assault was the bloodiest of the battle. Close quarters combat erupted among the trees. Men fought with bayonets, rifle butts, knives, fists. Grenades detonated so close the shrapnel hit both sides. Wounded soldiers refused evacuation, choosing to keep climbing rather than risk falling behind. Medics worked with trembling hands, tying tourniquets while bullets snapped past their ears. Bandages soaked through instantly. Helmets were dented by shrapnel. Bodies lay tangled between roots and vines. And still, the peak remained out of reach. Day 10, the final assault. Before dawn, the mountain echoed with thunder as jets dropped bombs and waves, tearing craters the size of swimming pools into the hillside. Artillery pounded the ridgeline until the ground shook like an earthquake. When the firing stopped, the mountain hissed with smoke. Then came silence. The Americans rose from their foxholes, drenched, hungry, blistered, eyes hollow from days without sleep. They fixed bayonets. They loaded magazines. They looked at each other with the quiet agreement, "This ends today." The final climb was slow, agonizing. The air smelled like burnt wood and wet soil. Branches snapped under boots. M16s fired nonstop. Machine gun teams laid suppressive fire until ammo belts ran empty. Then, a break. The firing ahead began to fade. The NVA were withdrawing. For the first time in 10 days, the peak was within reach. A small group of soldiers crested the final rise, rifles ready. They found the last NVA fighters slipping into tunnels, vanishing into the earth one final time. The hill, finally, was theirs. But no one cheered. Not one soldier lifted his weapon in triumph. They stood silently, staring at the devastation. Fallen trees, burnt leaves, bodies, broken helmets, empty casings, smashed radios, and a mountain that had swallowed hundreds of lives. Hamburger Hill had been taken, but the cost was so high that many wondered, was it worth it? To the men who fought there, the answer wasn't in strategy or politics. It was in brotherhood, in refusing to leave wounded behind, in climbing a hill that tried to kill them every single day. Because for them, the mission wasn't the mountain. The mission was each other, and that is why Hamburger Hill will forever remain one of the most brutal, haunting, and heroic battles in American military history.